Wow, wow, that's some pretty cool music. Ed Nwokedi, I'm the founder and CEO of Red Swan CRE, and I'm here with my colleague, Donald Parra, who's also co-founder and CTO of Red Swan. So very happy to be here. I want to thank Stellar for inviting us. This is a great opportunity to showcase some of the technology we're working on together, but also we really appreciate Stellar as being a partner. I think we share the same vision with regards to digital securities. So where are you going to start? I really want to talk about real estate as a use case. I mean, you've heard a lot about technology and how technology is being used on the blockchain, but I think we've been doing this since 2018, and the use case for tokenization for us is very real. It's a huge market, as you can see, worldwide. It's about almost $300 trillion of real estate. And I'd say a big portion of that, at least $30 trillion, is really controlled by major institutions. And so we see quite a bit of activity as institutions are now starting to pay attention to technology and how it's making changes in the industry. And I say that some are paying attention, some are still sleeping at the wheel, and we think that's going to be interesting in terms of a disruption into the industry. So, real estate has many of the same problems that you have probably already imagined, and it's been like this for decades in terms of transparency and divisibility and liquidity problems. And it's been okay because a lot of major institutions are the ones buying into real estate, and a lot of smaller players really aren't able to get into real estate, so they don't really mind it. But we think that blockchain is really going to make a significant change to that. And with that, I'm going to keep using the word disruption because I think that we're starting to see that happening right now. But when you look at tokenization as a technology, and basically all we're doing is taking a physical real-world asset and converting it into a digital token. And in our case with real estate, since we're selling securities, we're selling investments, and we're converting it into digital securities, it really allows us to fractionalize the investment, make it more affordable, make it more transferable between people so they can trade it. And this is a significant difference from what people were able to do before and what they're able to do now. And I think that's opening up the door to really make it more inclusive for people around the world to start investing, because we can take a real estate investment and bring it down from what used to be $250,000 down to $10 in certain emerging countries. So pretty excited about that. Well, I want to kind of tell you why I think the disruption is so huge. This is one of my favorite slides because it really talks about the demographic change, and this is particularly in the United States. You can see the demographic changes going from the baby boomers who control most of the wealth around the world. Well, the United States, I think it's about $156 trillion pie that the baby boomers were controlling, and most of that is being transferred over in the next 10 years to the millennials and to Xers. And so that's a major shift in just mentality. Think about broker-dealers and wealth advisors, how they have to change their thinking to start addressing this new demographic. And also major institutions are trying to change their way of doing business to understand these millennials so they know how to do business with them, because millennials don't like to talk a whole lot. They usually like to get their iPhones out or their iPads and communicate that way, and institutions have to figure out how to adapt to that. So we like that because that's a double transition in the industry that I think is going to be disruptive, is that we have the younger generation inheriting so much wealth, about $42 trillion of real estate over the next 10 years is transferring to a younger generation who thinks differently, acts differently. But then you have the blockchain technology that's allowing you now to divide those shares and make them more liquid and also more global. So these are areas where we think that's causing some concern among major institutions that control, like I said, about $30 trillion of real estate. And Red Swan is deeply involved in making that change. So when I talk about those two areas of disruptions, you can see that one of the areas that when you fractionalize, who wouldn't want to be able to pay less for a piece of real estate And so if you see firms that are selling real estate to their traditional investors, which may be family offices or high net worth investors, of course, if they're not inclusive of younger investors who want to put in less money but for the same asset, business is going to leave those firms to other firms that are more open to accepting those types of investors. And also, it broadens the market. We're looking at more international inclusion as well, from Asia to Europe to UAE and also to Africa. And we think that's very exciting. And then finally, the liquidity aspect of digital securities is something that has never been seen before, where you can buy a piece of real estate, and in 2 weeks you decide you want to sell out of it. You can put it on the exchange and sell that real estate. That has been a deterrent for people to buy because they weren't able to sell out their real estate as you can now. So these are all major changes that we're excited about, and it's why Red Swan is in existence. But I wanted to, first of all, get into some of the disruption we're looking at. We do a lot of research on our team, but we also use AI to give us a lot of research, and we see that the market is shifting. We see an opportunity that some of the leadership in the industry are going to change. At least 10% of the overall market is going to change to new entrants entering the market, and that's about $3 trillion over the next 5 years. So that's where we're trying to really play in that world. We think that's an area where we can make a difference, either helping major corporations to adopt to new technology, which tends to be pretty expensive for corporations to think about Polaroid when they had to change over to digital cameras, coming to that industry, how they had to change technology. They had put a lot of resources towards that. Well, we're seeing the same thing happen now as corporations who deal in commercial real estate, whether it be service firms or REITs, are now having to figure out how to change their business model to meet this new demand. And we see, again, according to AI and our research, that in the next 5 years, $14 trillion of real estate will be tokenized. That's a big number. But that's a very real number. We're seeing a lot of activity in Asia and in Middle East right now into the billions of dollars with tokenized, and we're actually helping that initiative take place. And we see that as a market for us to really get involved in the next 5 years, to really hopefully have about 5% of that overall market. So what I want to do now is kind of turn the mic over to Don, as he's going to talk a little bit about the technology and the minting studio that we're working with Stellar. Don?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ed. I'll just grab that off you. Yeah, so we were looking for a good partner to work with to actually make all this happen. And obviously, as Ed just described, we're bringing a major use case to the blockchain in terms of real estate tokenization. And Stellar has, right from the outset, also been very much about asset tokenization and bridging the gap between the old financial markets and the new emerging world. So we thought there was a very good sort of synergy there. We're collaborating on several fronts, initially starting with the minting of tokens in a regulated fashion, and then moving on to a full integration with our platform so that we'll be able to run an end-to-end process from minting compliant security tokens through to issuing STOs and finally trading on a secondary market or ATS. And obviously, from a Stellar perspective, we anticipate that's going to drive significant both assets on the tokenization, so assets on the chain, as well as significant transactional activity as people trade. So we started off with the obvious place to start, which is a token studio, which is a way to actually create these securities, configure them, and mint them on Stellar. We're leveraging all the support that Stellar already has built in. But we also realized that because we are fully regulated, I don't know if Ed mentioned, but we went through a full regulatory process in the US to get our license from SEC and FINRA to make sure that we're compliant with all the regulations in terms of issuing and selling securities. So we realized that there's certain specific extensions we needed to build in, and that's why we decided to build on Sorobrand with smart contracts and actually integrate those extensions, but also make everything we do backwards compatible so we can work with existing Stellar wallets and other parts of the Stellar infrastructure. So we're going to be able to, as I said, support this full lifecycle management, which means we can mint tokens that are compliant, we can issue them through an STO, and even when they get to the secondary market, we still have the ability to control them in a compliant manner so that they fall within the regulatory boundaries. So future plans, once we complete the work, you're going to get a sneak peek today of sort of work in progress on the studio. But we also have plans to open source this as an SDK in conjunction with Stellar, which is going to be an asset to the whole Stellar ecosystem. So if there's anyone else out there that's trying to build similar applications within not just real estate, but actually across the board in terms of any security-based assets, I think this SDK will be very valuable to them as a good starting point. For those more technically inclined, this is just a high-level overview of the type of architecture that we're looking at. So we thought of this in a layered fashion. So at the most fundamental layer, we just think about how to support the core functions required for any type of security asset. Then at the next layer up, we have split it into specific requirements for equities and for bonds, which are the two major types of assets. There may be additional assets in the future, which this could also support. And then finally, at the highest layer, that's when you specialize by regulation. So being based in the US, we started with support for the US regulation. In US, you can issue tokens to either Reg D, which are US citizens, or Reg S, which are international. And so some customization has been done to support that, but it's also built in a way that's very extensible. So if you wanted to extend this for the US, UAE jurisdiction or the European EU jurisdiction, this would be easy to do. This has also given us a great opportunity to collaborate with the Stellar technical team, which we've enjoyed very much because there's been a lot of backwards and forwards, and we actually feel we've been able to actually enhance certain elements of Sorobrand by sort of testing it with a significant use case, and that is ongoing. So hopefully if this works, we'll be able to play a little video. I don't know if I click or if they click, let's see. Oops. And okay, one more. And if someone is able to activate the video from that end. We'll give it a minute.
There we go.
There we go. And there's some volume, there's some audio there as well, if that's possible. So anyway, this is still work in progress, but this gives you a brief sneak peek of how the studio part of the whole architecture has been designed. So it's very easy for somebody to, first of all, configure a new security, set all the different parameters around it in terms of things like voting rights, access rights. You can create whitelists and blacklists to control who has access to this security. You can obviously set a maximum cap on how many tokens can be minted. And then once you've actually created the security, you can then start to mint tokens based on that security into an initial master wallet. So in our particular use case, we work with the owner of a major piece of real estate. We tokenize the equity. We put that in their wallet. And then at their discretion, we can issue one or more STOs by actually selling those tokens to the public. So what you see here is the actual minting of an initial set of securities on the Stellar testnet. So this will all be complete, very shortly, and then, as I said, hopefully we'll be actually able to open source that as an SDK and make that available to you all to also work with on your projects. So I think that's the end of the video. We should be able to move on back to Ed, who's going to give you another sneak peek in terms of what we are actually tokenizing, which I think makes all this real for everyone.
Thank you, Don. So again, why this is important for us is because we want to make sure that we provide high-quality real estate. My background before Red Swan was working with Cushman & Wakefield as a capital market executive director for 17 years. And so it was unfortunate that many of the people that I worked with were all high net worth individuals, institutions, but never, the rank and file investors. So we think this is changing all that. And so we've created these funds. I'll start with the USA fund. So we created a fund that has roughly 40 assets in it, roughly $3.9 billion, call it $4 billion worth of assets. These are assets that are looking for liquidity in the United States, meaning that the owner needs to pull some cash out. They don't want to sell the entire property, but they want to pull some cash out of the property. We go up to 80% of the equity or into the debt side of the capital stack as well. And so we created also what we call a feeder fund, a BVI, British version Islands feeder fund for international investors so that they can buy through the feeder fund and not have to be double taxed through the United States. So you have the master fund for U.S. Accredited investors, and you have the feeder fund for international investors, which we call Reg S investors. Reg S investors do not have to be accredited, but they do have to, everyone has to go through a KYC process, and so this is what we created the USA fund for. We also created a fund for Africa, and in Africa we're starting with the area of Nigeria, and we see student housing as being one of the highest use cases for new development in Nigeria. There's about 40,000 students, and about 10% of housing for those students is currently available. So we're working on 6 different locations across Africa, Nigeria rather, to create student housing. And this is a fund that we think will be a more impact fund for investors, and also a great part of the diaspora of Africa will probably want to invest in this fund just to be giving back to the community. Not to mention that the yields also are very attractive because of the fact that there's a high demand for student housing in that market. And then we have our GCC fund. This is like a $3.5 billion fund that we signed and we're now tokenizing. These are the products you'll be seeing on Stellar once we start tokenizing and making these available for the investors. But this is a combination of about 36 assets. I'll be showing you a quick video of it, but these assets are all stabilized, and they also have about 20% of land, which we'll see in the video, that is going to be developed into more of a high-rise or mixed-use type project. So let me go ahead and play that for you. Can you do the same here and turn on the video? There it goes. So this is giving you an idea of some of the land sites that they have that will be developed into verticals, which is roughly 20% of the overall portfolio. But as you can see, the majority of this is stabilized assets, a lot of multifamily properties, lots of office buildings and retail centers. These are like estates for expats. That's a school in the portfolio. But you're going to see mega retail centers. There's 3 of these projects are in the portfolio as well. And then we like this infrastructure. This is in that area, the land, they grow agriculture for the livestock, and this is an alfalfa farm that's built on the desert with its own irrigation system. And then finally, in that same vein, this is a fish farm, one of the largest fish farms in GCC, produce about 20 million tons per quarter of fish to feed that marketplace. So these are the type of projects that we're tokenizing in this market. And so you can see we're bringing assets in different locations around the world because we think it's time for citizens around the world to be able to pick and choose the yields and the locations that make sense for them, as opposed to being stuck to focus on only one location. When you're buying in a digital form, you can buy shares of each one of these funds, and that really diversifies your overall portfolio. We hope to be able to expand into other markets as well, but we're starting with these markets. We think this is diverse enough, but also the yield is very attractive, and we think this will be something that our clients are going to be very interested in. We already have some major institutions sponsoring our USA fund, putting almost half the value into that fund because they're very interested in buying assets in the U.S. to give back to their customers in their marketplace. So things are going pretty well, but thank you for your attention.